the Aon2 leader, Peadar Tóibín, tech journalist and podcaster, Elaine Burke, and Irish Examiner columnist Mick Clifford. Elaine, what exactly are Meta doing?
If you open up Instagram or Facebook apps in the next few days, you'll likely get a notification to inform you that they're going to start using publicly available data to train their AI systems. And that means that your posts, your comments, anything that is public on your profiles can become part of these training data sets. Now, I've also clarified with Meta that also includes stories on Instagram, which are actually seen as a more ephemeral way of posting because they have like a 24-hour timeline, they expire, but they are still stored in your archive, and I've been told that they are now going to be included as publicly available data in this move. You will have the option to fill out a form to object to this, and then if Meta confirms to you that they're going to honour your objection, you basically an email to say as much, well, then your data will not be included in this training. So you do have the option to opt out, but you do have to fill out that form and get the reply to confirm that. Essentially what they're doing is taking an approach that seems to be trying to skirt the trouble that X has now found itself in with the investigation that's just been opened up with the Data Protection Commissioner about how they went about this when they decided that they were going to start taking people's publicly available posts and data from the X platform to train the model for Grok, which is their chatbot. They instituted a tick box that was added to people's profiles without notification. If you didn't know it was there, it just arrived and you didn't know, and it was automatically ticked. So someone found this and shared it on X. So people on X found out about it, people objected. And now that investigation that's been launched by the DPC is about that data processing and whether that was lawful under GDPR. X was then forced to suspend that data processing. Meta also has delayed the release of these AI products in the EU because of these reasons. Because basically when it comes to AI into GDPR, there's still a lot of questions to be answered, and even this investigation into what happened with X and Grok is probably going to reveal the steps that we take forward in this, because with GDPR, you're supposed to have things like a right to be forgotten, a right to have information corrected, a right to even access what information is held on you. And the kind of processing that's happening when it comes to AI models, it's not the kind that we're used to where there's a data set and you call up specific pieces of information and they're there and they're used in a certain way. With AI models, it ingests large amounts of data, and then it goes into a training program which infers things from this data. And those inferences and those various nodes in that model that are derived from that data are a bit of a black box. Like even the developers themselves don't always understand. But you
probably as well, you probably can't extract your own information out of it, or rather, once you can maybe extract it out of the original data set, but once it's been absorbed into that black box, as you described it, it will continue to inform how Grok or Llama or ChatGPT or whatever it happens to be operates.
And as well as personal data, that could be proprietary data, which is the case that's currently ongoing in the States at the moment, where Meta is coming up against the Authors Guild in America to discuss the fact that they apparently have used pirated information that included thousands of books, millions of books into their data set. And even if that case lands in a certain way and says that that wasn't lawful, that stuff is still in that model. So what steps they can take forward, whether it means that the model can continue to operate, whether the products built on top of that model can continue to operate, is a big question. Now, the European Data Protection Board had actually issued an opinion around this at the end of last year. And they have kind of indicated that if personal data, because that's what's really protected under GDPR, if that's ingested into a model and it's sufficiently anonymized in that processing, so your personal data wasn't actually attached to you as, you weren't identified as the owner of that data, it could be safe, but how well it was anonymized is a big question there. And then they've said that if it wasn't well anonymized and it went into a model, then future use of the products on top of that model could be problematic, if not impossible.
Mick, we're in this arms race, it feels like, between regulators and these big AI companies.
Absolutely crazy. I mean, you think about, you might have a colourful turn of phrase, you might, whatever you have, however you express yourself, whatever you know, all of that data, or data, whichever way you want to put it, all of that is basically being harvested to make money for a very small group of billionaires who run the technology companies. You go back 100 years and you had people like Hearst in America, the newspaper baron, or William Martin Murphy, and these people were supposed to have wield huge power on the basis of their ownership of newspapers. This is in stratospheric compared to that. And even the mere fact, as Elaine said, you have to opt out and you have to go to the trouble of filling out a form, making sure you get a reply, rather than saying, OK, well, look, I'll opt in. It is really, really dark.
But even after opting out, and as Elaine says, I'm not sure your data really disappears from the system. It probably can't.
The whole thing. And I mean, and we're also remembering a position where Trump and his people want less regulation of that whole sphere, whereas at least there's something in Europe at the moment, nowhere near enough, but there's something. But the pressure being put on to loosen regulation, the whole thing is, I don't know, I think it's really...
Yeah, because there is a role for policymakers here, isn't there, Pater? Because Mick is right, there is pressure coming on from those big tech companies to loosen regulation here, and they talk of Europe being a hub for innovation as opposed to it happening in the States and those companies moving here, that you'd have European versions of those big tech companies. At the same time, you obviously need regulation to protect citizens and their rights, you know, given everything, as Elaine said. And then there's an added complication within that from an Irish point of view, that the Data Protection Commissioner really is at the spearhead of this from a European point of view, obviously here in Ireland. And those tech companies have the ear of government.
Yeah, like, first of all, I would say the political system is completely on the back foot in relation to this. Thankfully, they're setting up an AI Oireachtas committee in this round of committees. But this is, I will tell you, the knowledge levels in the Dáil in terms of what's happening here is tiny compared to the reality. And also, I agree with Mick. I actually think it is reminiscent of the robber barons of the end of the last century. Big tech is enormously powerful. It is a rule unto itself. And most governments, not just the American government, are scared of big tech in relation to this. There's no manners being put on them in terms of competition. They have incredible power, and their ability now to control narratives and politics, and is massively increased by this. Not on the first basis because you have all these fake images where people will find it very, very hard to understand what's real in future, but also because they control so much of the information that we're consuming that most people are going to become dependent upon the information that they're creating for them to understand. There's a real danger that bias can be inherent in the information that they're providing. So anybody that's using these tools are already using them probably on the basis that they think this is real information.
But, Elaine, there's a more tangible threat as well, isn't there, posed by it? And I want to kind of talk about it in solely negative terms. I tend to be an optimist about all of this. I think it's incredible, some of the stuff that this can do. But Fergal O'Rourke, who was the managing partner at PwC, he left about a year ago. He gave this exit interview, and I remember it to this day, and I think I'll always will. He talked about the pyramid that exists in companies. You've got your managing partners, your senior partners, associate partners, all the way down to your graduates, the bottom of the pyramid. And he says the pyramid is gone. It's now a cylinder, because all of those people, the further down you go, most of them are doing rule-based, repetitive work with large data sets. Says that will not exist in the future. That is like what happened in the Midlands and Bordnamona, but down in the Docklands.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you made that comparison, because it does seem to be that this conversation really got hyped up when tech became a threat to knowledge workers and these kind of jobs. Because when we were talking about a trend called Industry 4.0, it wasn't getting the attention that it's getting now, because that was displacement of manufacturing workers and people in factories. But it's the same kind of technological advancement in terms of automation technologies, computer vision technologies, and the kind of things that have underpinned the AI that we currently have available. I think now that it's a threat to people who make more money, people are more scared about it and getting a lot more voice in that. But it is a tool that can be used in many, many different ways. It's quite flexible. And I'm not a person to say that I'm anti-technology, but I've always been an advocate for informed and conscious use of it. And I think with AI, we are straying dangerously around this very unconscious, uninformed use of it. A lot of people's understanding of AI is actually guided by the companies that are selling it. They're told that they get answers to things when actually they get approximations. It would be a more accurate term. It's called generative AI, and a more accurate term would be derivative AI, because it doesn't actually generate anything anew. It has to be based on the data that's inputted into it, and there's a lot of difference in the meaning there when you think of it that way. And then there's the energy cost to it as well.